Uh, so yeah, hi. So welcome, Nick, to WebPerf. I wanted to talk about a few open issues that have been lingering on and see if maybe we can, use the fact that we now can afford a high bandwidth environment to hash those out and reach some conclusions or at least common understanding. So there are a few, I basically bucketed the issues to different types. So like we have a pile of resource timing issues that have like a ping label that like a tracker label that requires some follow-ups. And I wanted to provide just short updates on that. So for next hop protocol, there is a concern that it can reveal things about the user network. For example, the existence of a proxy. At the same time, talking to folks who use this attribute as a dimension now, it is critical in order to deploy and maintain various protocols. So knowing to split your traffic between, oh, this is just H1 clients versus H3 clients is a critical capability. And I've been thinking a bunch about how we can, maintain the use cases while at the same time, hey, Pete, thinking a lot about how we can maintain the use cases while removing this capability, which I think is not really like, I don't think it's a huge privacy issue when we're talking about H1 versus other protocols. But for example, for H2 versus H3, they're starting to look very similar and not necessarily detectable in other means. And yeah, basically, we're thinking about ways to resolve this in a way that will maintain the use cases but without the risk. Then for there's an issue around timing about origin and history that's from my perspective, like potential history leaks. But from my perspective, can be closed. A lot of that is addressed by cache partitioning and general partitioning of like cache and network state. And I believe I have a comment on the issue asking whether it can be closed. That was never addressed. So it would be great if we could get, someone's attention to either like close the issue or continue the discussion if there are still unaddressed bits. And then regarding timing allow origin semantics and the expansion of semantics over time, this is indeed something we did and indeed something we sort of regret. And we have an ongoing effort to basically improve our overall opt-in story and align the various timing and the various information that timing allow origin currently exposes, basically break it up into network level information, origin level information, and resource level information, where timing allow origin will be some sort of declaration about the resource, and other types of timings will be either pushed into aggregated reporting, which we talked about the other day while we weren't around. And basically, this is a mechanism that I hope we would be able to use in order to report some things in aggregate, but not for a specific user, preventing them from being a privacy issue, but still maintain their usefulness. For example, DNS reporting, DNS times was one of them, because they have no real implications on a single user, but they do have they are something you want to like monitor and aggregate. So there is ongoing work to basically undo some of the semantic expansion work we did and make sure that the opt-in makes sense from a developer perspective and 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 hopefully address this issue.
The opt-in
Yeah, but
site?
yeah, let's do presentation first.
Okay, great.
Then, because I'm
Recording, yeah.
yeah. Okay, and then there is the issue of deployability and monitoring, which I opened a tag design principle for, which I strongly believe that those two are critical for enabling modern development, preventing regressions, enabling the evolution of the web platform, both from a security perspective as well as from ease of, easing deprecations, and finally for ensuring, that the sites are, experienced the way that we want them to be experienced. And there are a couple of issues that touch on that. One is specific against the reporting API infrastructure, and the other is around ancillary uses. I have to admit that I had to look up ancillary, and it actually seems like it's the fits the purpose, basically providing necessary support to the primary activities or operation of an organization, institution, industry, or a system. And I think that the necessary here is the key word. And from those issues, there are various discussions around whether it is something that users can opt out of or have to opt into. And essentially, I think that we need to make a clear distinction here of data versus transport. The reporting API is just an infrastructure API. Similarly, for the beacon API or the future pending beacon API or unload beacon, or I don't remember.
Fetch.
Yeah, whatever. Yes, they are similar to fetch. And if specific data is sensitive, we need to talk about the data's sensitivity and talk about whether we should expose it at all, but in a global and holistic way. And talking about the reporting API more specifically and what data it currently provides, it has very different buckets and very different categories. So we have CSP violations, document policy violations, co-op, co-app, and those are all basically enablers to deploying new security primitives on the web, because websites cannot deploy them without risking regressing or causing severe outages, and they need these report-only modes in order to deploy those security policies safely. Then we have deprecation reports. We had a breakout session yesterday about their criticality towards the web's evolution and our ability to deprecate old and busted web features. And then there's also interventions, which, some engines may choose to create various interventions on the website's content, and this enables the website to know about that. We have crash reports, and then we also talked about, with the accessibility folks, we talked about maybe surfacing accessibility issues and severe performance issues through the reporting API. So there are very different types of data riding over this infrastructure. Um, and then there's the question of what problem are we trying to solve with, having users opt in or opt out to this infra or to the data. Are we trying to prevent overexposure of data? Are we trying to save users' battery, their data plans, or something else entirely? It is not quite clear from either of the issues what it is we're trying, what user problem are we trying to address here? So why not have some sort of an infrastructure opt-in or opt-out? Because as long as the data is available by other means, developers will figure out ways to gather that data and send that data out. And like adding friction to the well-lit path that we want developers to take will cause them to take shader alleys and will discourage them from migrating from the hacky APIs that are user hostile, that they're either were using or are still currently using. It will prevent them from moving to the nicer and hopefully more user-friendly APIs like Beacon, like reporting, that provide them a cleaner way of sending that data up. And of gathering the data, because a lot of the performance data is also something that developers can deduce and have deduced from load events, from set timeouts, from graphs. But all of these have performance costs as well, and we want developers to have other ways of gathering the data without without those costs. And if we talk about why not have data opt-in or out, so first of all, for a lot of the data, there is I think it would be so. Before we talk about bias, for a lot of the data, there is no. We cannot really opt developers out of that data without breaking website, without breaking content that they rely on, or without providing critical functionality. So for example, if I'm looking at all the security feature violation reports, those are things we want to be reported, but we also want to have them on the client side. We need developers to be able to do something about CSP violations and maybe provide fallback content or something similar. Other than that, there's the issue of data bias. If a slice of the population will opt out of this data, it will mean we will have a blind spot when looking at the data from, for deprecation reports, for example. And we see in Chrome that we have, in Chrome, we are collecting data regarding feature use, and certain segments of the population are somewhat invisible to us, and that causes us to potentially make bad decisions when moving forward with deprecations that are then used by those segments of the population. So reporting API is essentially a way for us to recoup, so not for us Chrome, but for us as a community to recoup that visibility and have, so if we don't know about that, then sites will know about that and do something about those deprecated features. But if we reintroduce the same bias to this, to the data gathered, then this will result in a very similar blind spots. Finally, I heard a lot of good analogies from privacy folks regarding brick and mortar stores about us, the fact that we don't want to walk into a store and have their security cameras facially recognize us, know what we did in other stores, and then have someone follow us and yell at us about things we may or may not want to purchase there. I think those analogies are reasonable ones. At the same time, putting opt-ins on this kind of data would be akin to users being able to turn off user counter, like if we have visitor counters in stores that prevent stores from having too many people in them, or if we have sensors in stores that detect that a shelf is empty. We don't want individual shoppers to be able to turn off those means that will prevent the store from functioning properly. And beyond that, there is no reasonable expectation that individual shoppers will be able to do that. There's no reason for them to do that. From my perspective, I think it also like having an opt-in here will send the wrong message of this data being somewhat scary or something that, you know, websites are wrongfully collecting about their users where it's not the case, in my view, or if it is the case, we should talk about specific slices of data where this is the case. And, you know, and finally, I really like looking over the issue. I really like this quote from Jeffrey, where we have collective interests in aggregating data, which should be managed socially rather than just individually. I think that we need to look at what will make the web platform prosper in a holistic way. And yeah, that seems reasonable, and it's based on a paper that I didn't read because it's 70 pages and it was 6 a.m. this morning. But it seems insightful. So yeah, with that, let me stop the recording and we can chat.